Welcome back to another episode of Befuddled and Confused. Please like, subscribe, and share this video so we can hopefully get more subscribers and more views, so we can get some feedback and see how we're doing. So I guess it's my week and to figure out what we're going to talk about. And so I thought we'd talk about gun control and the Second Amendment and everything that's happening in our world right now. With gun violence and everything that's happening. Because I guess there was just another one in Texas or something.
Yes.
Today.
Oh, wow.
I believe, or yesterday, one or the other. So we talked. I asked your opinion, see if this was going to be not a both we agree on. So what's your stance on the Second Amendment?
Well, I think when they made the Second Amendment, our right to bear arms, of course, it was a completely different time, and it wasn't based on the weapons that we have now.
So, if I were to take your point of view, does that mean you would be okay with me owning the type of weapons that were legal to own back then, under the Second Amendment?
Yeah.
So, do you know that under the Second Amendment back then, that private citizens were allowed to own warships?
No, I didn't know
and
that.
cannons? So I could have a cannon in my backyard under the Second Amendment back then?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you'd have a cannon in your backyard now, but yeah.
But you see, like that's the argument that a lot of people use is like, oh, they used to have muskets back then. They didn't have machine guns back then. Technically, they did have machine guns back then. They had a gun that fired, I believe it was 76 rounds in 6 minutes. So it didn't take a minute to load a musket. I forget what it was called. It was actually developed by a French engineer, and it was back in the 1500s. So people saying that they had these muskets, that it would take us a minute to reload. We didn't have the same kind of weapons. We did technically sort of have the same weapons. I think what people get confused about with, not people get confused about, they're like, oh, well, it's all about the militia. It talks about a militia. It also talks about that the government shall make no laws infringing upon our right. And I also believe that the Second Amendment never lived up to its full purpose, because if the slaves were allowed to own guns, I don't think slavery would have lasted as long.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, do you still believe that we should own the same type of weapons that we were allowed to under the Second Amendment?
I mean, I think they need to change the Second Amendment, to, it would be something big, I think, to see what kind of weapons,
Okay. So my pushback once again on that is, what would you take away from private citizens?
Not sure. Maybe they don't need to have as many weapons as some of these people have,
So my pushback on that is, who would follow the law?
Probably no one. Just the law-abiding citizens.
So here's where I am on gun control, right? Like I understand my damn cat's in this kitchen sink. I understand the aspect of needing more gun reform, more gun control. However, if we do gun control and gun reform on people that already follow the law, like, that does no good. So like why don't we do gun reform and stricter gun laws on people that break the laws with guns?
Yeah.
So like, if you're a felon that's not supposed to have a gun, it's not a violation of probation. It's not a misdemeanor. It's like, all right, like, that's another strike. You get 10 years in jail, right? Or if you shoot someone, it's not like we get more harsher crimes with people that break the laws instead of people that follow the laws. Instead of saying you can't own this type of gun, like, hey, you can own that gun, but if something happens, like, you're going to be more liable for it. And that's where I think a lot of people don't see it, is like when you make a law, like, the people that follow the law are always going to follow it. It's the people that break the law, and those are the people that we have issues with, isn't it?
Yeah, and also, like, you have to do a background check and all this other stuff when you first apply to get a gun, and that's it. You do it once, But you don't know if a year or two later you got in trouble for whatever it was, domestic violence, you know, whatever it is. Like they should do more regular, excuse me, more regular background checks. You know, every 5 years or something.
And so this is my ignorance. So they do a background check, and so they already have your information. So like, why isn't that information used?
I don't know.
Right? Because I follow your point. So like I go register for a gun. They have to do a government background check. It's a NIC or whatever. I forget what NIC stands for. So they have my information. So like that information should be tied to me.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say I get arrested and I have a felony on my record.
Mm-hmm.
So they should know that I've already registered for a gun.
Mm-hmm.
So I would have to either show proof that I sold that gun or surrender that weapon. So I don't think we would have to refile, but I think your background check should follow you.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
So like getting into that and like what's happening now with the people that are getting killed and all that, like I want to get into that because people want to blame the cops for doing a bad job, and they do. Not all cops are perfect, but there was a video the other day, and this goes back into George Floyd and Dante Wright and that 13-year-old kid that got shot in Chicago. I think it was in Texas. I forget where it was. It was just a few days ago, or maybe it was April. I forget. But their video came up where a police officer went up to the window. He was pulling over a gentleman, and he said something to the gentleman. The gentleman was getting out of his car. He threw something in his face. Didn't know what kind of liquid it was, what kind of chemical it was. And so, like these cops don't know what they're coming into. And so, for everyone to jump on, like where's your stance on police reform? Or police defunding the police?
I don't think they should.
Why not?
Why not? Because just because there's one bad cop and however many it could be, you know, 1,000 doesn't mean they're all bad. You know, I'm gonna call the cops when I need help. And if we defund the police, who am I gonna call?
So not the most, but one of the biggest arguments I've heard from the left is airplane pilots don't get that excuse. Like, oh, they're not all bad. Like 90% of them, or 99% of airplane pilots, like can fly a plane. Like, why should we get rid of airplane pilots? Only 1% crash. You know, they're the only profession that gets to use that excuse. Hold on, I gotta get my cat. Interrupt the video because my cat's all up in my sink. Police are the only ones that get to use the excuse like, oh, they're only bad apples, but they're the ones that it's life and death.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's life and death of us, not of them.
Why of us?
Because they're killing us.
Okay, but you can't say they're killing us. What is a criminal? Because it's usually when a crime's going on. What is a criminal doing to get killed?
That's my and that's where my stance is like we damn cat. My stance is I don't think we should defund the police. Like I think that's the dumbest thing ever. I think we actually need more policing. I think we need more funding for the police to better train them.
Yeah, more training.
So we could select better cops. You know, going back to, and I know it's comparing apples and oranges in a way, but like we talked earlier about them wanting to lower the standards for women in the military. Yeah. Have they lowered the standards for women as a police officer? Have they lowered the standards to make it more accessible for certain types of people to become a police officer, right? Yeah. Like we should be raising the bar. Yeah. And so like it's harder to become a police officer. And I believe like 20% of their time should be in training. Yeah. Like 1 day a week, it should be going over how to deal with hostile situations. Because like you get that training in police training, but like how often you gotta like what recertify for your gun like once or twice a year.
Yeah. Yeah, they should. They should have that training ever so often, like you said.
Right. So, that's with what's going on with the police, and like I'm scared with what's going on because they only show one side. Because what happened with Dante Wright is, yes, Porter did shoot him, the 26-year vet. They're using the excuse, and no one's even gotten the full information that she mistaked her taser for a gun. I don't know if she was calling taser for herself or she was telling the person that she was training that day, hey, use your taser, because she was saying taser, taser, taser. Like, no one knows what's in her mind there. However, they do know what was on his record, right? Like they ran it. Like the mother gave out misinformation saying that he got pulled over for something in his review window. However, his tags were expired. So he got pulled over for his tags, not for the damn thing hanging in his window. So when they pull you over and they get your license and registration, they run it, they find out that he has a gun charge. So when he's fighting to get away from Porter and from everyone else and getting back in his car, how do they know what he's going in his car for? They don't know he's going in his car to take off.
Exactly.
They don't know if he has a gun in the car. Right? Like, I'm not the smartest person, but like I watch enough to understand like cops touch your taillight when they come up to your car. Why do they touch your taillight when they come up to your car?
I'm not sure.
In case they get shot, that car now has their fingerprints on it.
Okay.
When
That's
the
smart.
when the criminal gets pulled over.
Oh, wow, that's smart.
Like, why would cops have to do that if they're not afraid for their life? Then like I hear like all these, I don't want to castigate all people in one category, but I hear some Democrats talking about how cops that give traffic tickets shouldn't have weapons. What's your thought on that?
No, they should have weapons because the car you're pulling over, that person might have a gun. Right? They might have a knife. It could be any kind of weapon.
The car itself is a weapon.
Yeah,
I've seen police officers get hit by cars.
there you go. So why not have a weapon?
Right. Like this whole thing is getting me confused, and it's baffling me. And now Maxine Waters is, like she was just on Twitter talking about how if Derek Chauvin is not found guilty, that I watch out. Like that's a congresswoman.
Oh God.
Like Derek Chauvin, like I'm not gonna freaking walk a line here. George Floyd shouldn't have died. However, if you watch the trial in its entirety, like it hasn't been proven beyond a reasonable doubt that Derek Chauvin committed second degree murder, third degree murder, or second degree manslaughter. And so, if he's found guilty on any of those, it's going to be political.
Yeah, I think if he's found guilty or even not guilty, people are still gonna, be in an uproar.
Right.
Yeah.
And it sucks because like we live in an echo chamber right now because what's happening is like I've talked to a relative and they're like, how do you say that they haven't proven that Derek Chauvin killed George Floyd? And I was like, well, if you go from the beginning, like all we've heard about is 8 minutes and 29 seconds on the neck. Now it went up to 9 minutes and whatever seconds on his neck. But during the trial, they showed that he was on his back and shoulder blade. They had people testifying that like he. So here's a thought game for you that I heard on another podcast. Would you rather have the amount of fentanyl and methamphetamines ingested into your body, or have someone that's 140 pounds with 40 pounds of gear kneeling on your back?
The person kneeling on my back.
Because you're less likely to die.
Yeah.
So, if you would take that because you have a chance of living, how can you say that Derek Chauvin killed him?
No, I don't think he did.
I think he contributed it to it.
Yeah. It didn't help. But he was under the influence.
Right.
Yeah.
With all the fentanyl. And so let's go back to everything else, right? Because I like they're saying that Derek Chauvin killed George Floyd, he's a racist, and he murdered him and Dante Wright and all this other stuff. However, in George Floyd's case, how many other people were in the car?
I know of at least one.
I believe
It's
there's two other people.
dealer, right?
Yeah, I believe there was two other people and they were
Okay.
black. How many other people were in the car with Dante Wright?
I don't know.
One other person has a girlfriend. How many people? So altogether, so what? There's three and there's two. So altogether, there's five, right?
Mhm.
So out of 5 people, how many people resisted arrest?
Just 2, right?
Right.
Yeah.
How many people died?
2.
So what's that tell you? If you don't resist arrest,
Yeah.
your chances of living are pretty good.
Yeah.
And they don't talk about all the white people or all the Asians or all the Hispanics.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
We live in this world where anything can be put onto social media and castigated as racist right away.
Mhm.
They don't talk about the white people that are killed by black cops or the black people that are killed by black cops, or if it doesn't fit the narrative, it does no good.
Yeah.
So, what are your thought processes on what's going to happen with Derek Chauvin? I know you haven't watched the news.
No, I haven't followed the case either. I mean, I just heard bits and pieces here. You know, he should be found guilty if it's without a reasonable doubt. Now, is that going to happen? I don't know. Are they going to, you know, are the jury, I don't know if it's a jury or just the judge, but are they going to be intimidated by like, okay, if we don't find him guilty, you know, what's going to happen? You know?
Right, and so here's some other news for you. That, like the mainstream media isn't talking about. So Dante Wright was killed in a city that one of the jurors lives in, and where the riots happened. The defense asked for the jury to be sequestered. The judge denied it.
Oh, that's not good.
So all the jury members are going to talk. They're going to see what happened. They're going to see the riots that happened right after Dante Wright. Right before the trial, George Floyd's family got $27 million.
Oh, wow.
During the trial, one of the jurors actually had to be pulled aside and questioned because someone was talking to them about a book deal. One of the jurors was being talked about to get a book deal. Then, Derek Chauvin's lawyer got someone up there, and they were talking about, like it's hard to say what he died from. It could have been his heart blockage or his artery blockage. It could have been the fentanyl. It could have been the methamphetamine. It could have been the CO2 in his lungs because he was next to the exhaust pipe, and it could have got carbon monoxide. Wait, hold up! Like all of a sudden the defense changed. Not the defense, the prosecution changed. Because then the prosecution wanted to call on a rebuttal witness. The judge specifically said, you can't, because they got the test results of the blood oxygenation of George Floyd. And the judge said, you had this back in February. You chose not to use it. If you bring it up at all, there will be a mistrial.
Oh.
So what did the prosecution do? They brought it up.
Oh.
And there was no mistrial.
See, that doesn't make sense.
So, not only is there reasonable doubt, the judge has basically handed Derek Chauvin, what do you call it when you, an appeal through everything that's been given to him.
Yeah.
And like, public schools in Minneapolis are closed Wednesday through Friday next week. Why are they closed Wednesday through Friday next week?
Because of the verdict's gonna come out.
However, the mainstream media has been telling us, like, the prosecution is like, oh, they're nailing it, they're nailing it. Well, if the prosecution is doing such a great job, why are we shutting down the schools?
Because I know the people will riot whether it's a guilty or not guilty verdict.
That, and they're not showing everything that the defense is doing.
Yeah.
That's like the whole O.J. Simpson trial. I could go through the whole O.J. Simpson trial, but you never talk about if the glove doesn't fit, you must acquit part. Like that was a huge selling point, right?
Yeah.
But like if you never heard that part of the OJ, you'd be like, how did they let OJ off? Because the prosecution fucked up. Sorry, I don't mean to cuss. So, this all goes back to police reform and everything, because like going back to the Second Amendment, what they're trying to pass right now is a lower capacity magazine, and like I understand their objective. However, a Glock 17 holds 17 rounds. A Glock 19 holds 19 rounds. Like it's standard, right? And like most police guns, I believe, hold 16 rounds. So that means you're saying that cops walk around with high capacity magazines all the time?
Yeah.
but I what I'm saying is these reforms are so arbitrary. Like there's no standards. Well, there's standards. I shouldn't say that. There's no reason behind them. It's just like, oh, let's get rid of assault rifles. Well, what's an assault rifle? It's an AR-15, and we were talking about this last night. AR does not stand for assault rifle. You know, and most people believe it does, and it's the 15th design, so it's the AR 15th design of that model, right? And so people are ignorant on that. So, like, if I hit you with this bottle of Gatorade, this becomes an assault bottle.
Yep.
Right. So if you say an assault rifle and it's just a generic term, that means all rifles are banned then. Yeah. Assault weapon, you know, weapons are weapons of war. Like I believe most soldiers carry a handgun too. So does that mean like handguns are weapons of war? I where's the definition? And then Biden goes into his speech, and he says, no amendment is 100% finite, and he says something to the effect that like no amendment is perfect, and like there's always room to go back and change. Why don't you go tell some black people about the 14th Amendment not being 100% accurate?
Ooh, yeah.
If he said all amendments are not are not finite. Go back and tell some black people about that on the 14th Amendment, Joe Biden.
Yeah.
That's why we have the amendment. Because it's there for a reason.
Yeah. That makes sense.
So I don't know. So what else do you want to talk about? Any other opinions on this?
No. I mean, I personally don't like guns myself, but you know, people own them. My dad owns guns, you know.
So for my birthday, I want to worship.
Good luck with that.
It was funny when I found that out.
Yeah, it is.
Private citizens can own warships. They can own cannons. I forget what it was, but like when I was talking about the machine gun, it's like you pull the string and like it's all these guns lined up together. So it's not technically a machine gun, but it was an apparatus, or like the Gatling gun. Like you know what the Gatling gun is, where you turn it.
Yeah.
But it was all these guns lined up, and you pull it, and it shoots them all off at a time. You know. So like we had these weapons of mass destruction way back then.
Yeah.
Were they popular? No. Were they cheap? Hell no. And they were all protected under the Second Amendment.
Yeah.
I got something to talk to you about then. All right.
Uh-oh.
So you talk about how the Second Amendment needs to be changed because like that's not why it was written, right? And this is going to get a lot of controversy. It should. How come without so people want to take away our rights and like fundamentally change it and make laws to change the Second Amendment. However, when the Constitution was made, there was no such thing as gay marriage.
True.
And under our Constitution, gay marriage, there's nothing talking about gay marriage. There's nothing talking about abortion. But yet, like we interpret our Constitution to protect those things. instead of fundamentally changing our laws.
Yeah.
Why is that? Like, why is it okay for us to interpret it to fit a progressive agenda without fundamentally changing the law, but you want to fundamentally change the law on something that the right views as a right and not just leave it up into interpretation? Are you following what I'm trying to ask?
Yeah. Yeah. Why can't we just interpret it a different way?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know.
Like, why didn't they ever pass a law? And I mean an amendment, right? Where like I know every state now you could have gay. I think it's every state. Pretty much you could have gay marriage. Why didn't they make an amendment for gay marriage? Why didn't they make an amendment for abortion?
I don't know. They should. I mean, but I mean, I'm pro-choice, so like that's.
Well, that's what I mean. Like,
Yeah.
like why there is no law. The only law there is Roe versus Wade, right?
Yeah.
And that's not even a law. That is a court's decision based upon the right to privacy, based upon certain aspects of what they interpreted. However, there's nothing specifically written saying like a woman has a right to an abortion in our Constitution.
Yeah.
So I like to protect. I don't agree with abortion. However, but to protect your side, like why hasn't there been a proposal, a legislation to specifically say that? Because then like it wouldn't be up for interpretation anymore. It wouldn't be up for a debate anymore. Like it couldn't be like, oh, we're gonna go to the Supreme Court. Well, sorry, like it's our 99th Amendment where you have the right to an abortion. You know, like why haven't the Democrats done that?
I don't know.
Because they don't believe in it.
You're saying they don't believe in abortion,
No,
or they don't believe in a woman has a right.
they don't believe it'll pass. Because it's a lot of talk.
Mm-hmm.
Because what they'll tell you is the majority of Americans believe this. Well, like we went through this before. You've never been polled.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been polled. But like they tell us, majority of Americans back this, and the majority of Americans back that, or the latest one, I think it was like 80% of Americans believe or want the stimulus package, and like 70% of the Americans want the jobs package.
Mm-hmm.
Do they? And what were they polled on? Because if you poll me and say, hey, do you want $1,400 from the government? I'd be like, yeah. And so is that a yes that I back the stimulus package, or yes, I want $1,400? And they can interpret it however they want.
Yeah.
Like, what were they polled on? And that's where I get to like I don't really believe that the Democrats believe they could get an abortion law passed.
Yeah. Probably not.
They
Unfortunately.
can't. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, we need to protect our kids, but once you're 18, like, that's on you. What else do you want to talk about?
I don't know. I'm tired today. Well, I was drinking coffee.
No, but I mean, I hope I hope we talked about something that like you guys will not think about, especially going to the Second Amendment, talking about gun rights, talking about gun violence, talking about police reform, and like just opening that conversation. I'm not saying like I'm 100% right. I'm not saying that Lizzie's 100% right. However, like we don't have the discussion and figure out like what's going on. Like she didn't know about the warships and the cannons that were allowed back then. And there's probably a lot I don't know. Please let us know, because like how are we supposed to make an informed decision based upon limited information? It's very easy to say, oh yeah, the Second Amendment only protects the militia, only protects certain things. And that's if you dissect the amendment down to its specificity instead of like looking at it in a generality.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'll end on this is like they say freedom of speech is limited. You can't say fire in a crowded theater. Have you heard that before?
Yes.
So back in, I believe it was 1909, it went to the Supreme Court, and like they said, you couldn't shout fire in a crowded theater. And then I think it was in the 1960s or 70s that was overturned.
Oh.
Because what if there is a fire in a crowded theater?
Yeah, then you need to scream fire.
Right. Not only that, you can shout fire in a crowded theater. However, there will be consequences, good, bad, or indifferent, right? Because like what's your intent in screaming fire in a crowded theater? So like that was overturned, and like once again, Joe Biden, like being our president, should know that law was overturned.
Yeah.
You know, and like I know I'm bringing up Joe Biden. Like if it was Trump, I would do the same thing because like Trump did say some stupid stuff. However, our deporter in chief, or whatever you want to call Biden right now, or house plan in chief, like whatever you want to call him. He's been in Congress long enough. Like he should know, like certain things have been overturned. He should know that our amendments are our amendments, and like can't just change them willy nilly. So that's where I'm at. Yeah. Any final thoughts?
No, I'm sure I'll hear from somebody because I have people who are in favor of guns.
So please like, subscribe, share, comment. I mean, those that know Lizzie can text her, but like, how about you comment here so we get a conversation started, and we know what to talk about next. Next week is Lizzie's decision to figure out what we talk about. So throw her some ideas on what you'd like us to talk about. See you next week.
Bye.